everyone, and welcome to another episode of Just the Tips. I'm your host, Lab Monkey, and it has been a little while since I've released an episode. My apologies for that, but the changes to the game that are about to be implemented by CG have necessitated a new episode. So I guess you can thank CG for this one tonight. So for those of you who are living under a rock, or maybe for some reason only get my Just the Tips Senate-wide ping and no other pings in the Discord, CG is radically changing the way that Squad Arena and Grand Arena offer their rewards. And furthermore, they are changing up how Grand Arena actually works in terms of matchmaking and in terms of how often and what type of season we'll be running. And I'll cover all of those changes very briefly here. But the purpose of this episode is to help prepare as many of you as possible to adapt quickly to these changes and position yourself to come out ahead, or at least come out as well as you can with regard to these changes. So, without further ado, let us jump right in. So, Squad Arena is dead. Long live Grand Arena Championships. And what I mean is that Squad Arena, while it will still exist in pretty much the same form that it does currently, they will no longer be awarding crystals for your payout. You will only be getting Squad Arena tokens. And so what that means is a lot of people's income is going to be directly affected, either in a positive or a negative way. So if you were not doing well in Squad Arena, but you have a good, solid roster and a broad roster that just didn't have that top Galactic Legend, and you were finishing, say, in the hundreds every day, this change is probably going to benefit you a lot. You're probably going to come out with a lot more crystals than you would have otherwise. And conversely, if you were a smaller account, but you either spent a significant amount of money or you were razor focused and devoted every single resource towards getting that first Galactic Legend in a young shard, your income is probably going to drop significantly over the next couple of days and months. That's just kind of how it is, and I'm going to tell you how to adapt to that situation as well. So, I don't want to get into the nitty-gritty of everything that's changed. You can go onto the forums and read yourself if you're very interested. I just want to concentrate on telling you what I think the best way forward is for all accounts. So, first big difference. In Grand Arena, there is no more sandbagging matchup GP. And, of course, sandbagging has a super negative connotation to it. And I don't necessarily mean it in a negative way. All of us do it to some degree, or at least did it, because you want to be careful with your resources. And, you know, some Zetas are not worth that much and would cause you to have a significantly worse matchup because somebody else would be applying that same Zeta to a better character. And they would gain, an advantage over you because the way the old matchmaking system worked, it just took your top X amount of characters GP, made sure that it was almost the exact same as your opponent within the same division, and that's how CG decided to do matchmaking in a quote-unquote fair way. So, obviously, people gamed the system to varying degrees, and so we had some very crazy sandbag accounts that would routinely finish first in their respective divisions pretty much every season, because what they would do is they would just apply pretty much no relics. They would get a bunch of characters up to G12. They would apply the finisher pieces because that gives speed at almost no GP cost. So you would see these accounts in Division like 2 and 3 that would win the entire league and not have a single Galactic Legend or Relic character. It was kind of silly. So That will no longer be the case here because even though there will be different divisions and leagues, um, everybody will be pushing towards the top. The goal will be to get into Kyber 1 and to win as many matches as possible because that will give you the biggest crystal payout. And obviously, every league that you go lower than Kyber 1 will offer you a chance at less overall crystals per day. So, there's a lot of math that you can do to figure out what league and how many wins and losses you need to come out even or ahead, or however many crystals you're going to fall behind. I'm not really interested in that topic right now. What I want to tell you about is how to do the best and get the most crystals that you possibly can, both in the short term and in the long run. So let's go for that. There are 3 types of accounts that I'd like to cover here, and they're solely related to the amount of GP that you have. Obviously, there's many different types of play styles and accounts, but there's 3 main ones that I want to talk about. We're going to talk about accounts that are less than 2 million overall GP. We're going to talk about accounts that are kind of 2 to 4 million GP, and then we're going to talk about accounts that are 4 million plus. So, obviously everybody's account will fall into one of those 3 categories. I will keep it somewhat brief for all 3 categories so that I don't bore you to tears with the other 2 that do not directly apply to you. So let's talk about the low GP accounts. You are less than 2 million. You are still on your way to your first Galactic Legend, most likely. What do you need to do in order to maximize your crystal income? Well, there's not a whole lot that you can do in the short term, to be honest. This change negatively impacts lower accounts most because since everybody is competing in one giant pool, the rewards brackets don't care. They don't really care how much GP you have. They're only going to match you by your skill rating, which is only determined by how many wins and losses you've had. And so you're going to have a lot of Galactic Legends. You're going to have really good mods. You're going to have a really broad roster to be able to consistently win because the system is going to continue to place you higher and higher in the bracket until you come up against people who just completely outgun you. And that's going to happen for low GP accounts. There's no way that you're going to climb into Kyber anytime soon. You're just going to have to deal with that. So what is your option then? What do you do in terms of your ability to grow your account? Well, honestly, there's really only one good option for you. The Fleet Arena has not changed. It is only the Squad Arena that has moved its crystal payouts. So what I would strongly advise anyone with an account under 2 million GP to do is to prioritize getting Executor. Because Executor is basically the fleet version of a Galactic Legend. And if you have Executor, especially as a young account, you're going to be able to get 400 daily crystals, almost certainly, because you're going to be at the top of your Fleet Arena payout every night. And so that really is, overnight, CG has changed the math and has said basically low GP accounts are never going to get the equivalent of 500 Squad Arena crystals. They're just not going to get that for a year at least, probably more. And so the only option that you really have is to go for crystals in Fleet Arena and, practice your GAC and do as well as you can and try to get as many of those crystals as possible. But it's just not going to ever come close to the 500 crystals that you could have gotten previously in Squad Arena. So that is my very, very strong recommendation for anybody who has a low-level account. Go after Executor. Do everything in your power to solidify your fleet power and continue to rake in those 400 daily crystals, and you can grow your account that way for quite a long time. That's how I started growing my account as well. was prioritizing Fleet Arena first. So that really hasn't changed. It's just which fleet you have to go for now. So let's talk about the second type of accounts, which is the ones that are between 2 and 4 million GP. And those are what I'm going to call mid-game accounts. I know these terms are very, very loose. And everybody's definition of what early and mid-game accounts are is going to be different. So for our purposes, 2 to 4 million is mid-game. So assuming that you've gotten Executor and or you are sitting on top of your Fleet Arena shard and are not in danger of falling out anytime soon, this is the time when you want to start really expanding your roster as much as possible and at the same time going after a GL. So I know I've done an episode previously on which GLs you should go for first. And honestly, a lot has changed, but a lot has also kind of stayed the same. So my recommendation in that earlier episode was to go for Jedi Master Luke as your first GL. Basically because his requirements provide you a very nice, solid base of other teams that you can use in Grand Arena while you work on your Galactic Legend. And it hasn't changed, even with the release of Jedi Master Kenobi and Lord Vader. Those requirements for Jedi Master Luke they are the best out of all of the Galactic Legends in terms of what they provide your account. And it's not really even close. So I strongly recommend, if you're not sure which GL to go for, in this new paradigm when you want as many functional teams for Grand Arena as possible, Jedi Master Luke is almost a no-brainer. The only other consideration would be Supreme Leader Kylo Ren, in my mind. And the reason is because, first of all, he doesn't really require a whole lot of other build-up in terms of characters having to get multiple legendaries before you can get the Galactic Legend. He's just kind of there. And you can farm his requirements, gear his requirements, and really the only gate is getting his finalizer to 5 stars, which is not too hard if you have a singular focus. And the other reasons for Supreme Leader Kylo would be to solo the Sith Raid, although CG has said that simming is going to be an option in the near future. Now, for young accounts and young guilds, that's not going to be an option because you're going to have to defeat it multiple times anyways. But consider that Supreme Leader Kylo Ren can solo Sith Raid, give you top 10 HSTR rewards for a long time. That will significantly boost your income and progress as well. So, in addition, it provides 2 solid first order teams, both the GL team that you'll have and also a second B team, as well as a nice fleet. So, Supreme Leader Kylo is definitely number 2 on my list in terms of which GLs you should consider going for in this mid game. Outside of that, outside of going for GLs, which I wouldn't recommend you deviate too far from because GAC really does revolve around GLs right now. They're not the end-all be-all of GAC, but they are the levers that are pushed that everything else kind of revolves around. So the more GLs you have, the more options you'll have, the further you're going to be able to climb in the ladder. So that's my recommendation for the mid-game. Just basically choose solid GLs that have good requirements that will help fill out more GAC teams to you. So the other thing that you need to consider when you're in that 2 to 4 million range is the fact that until you hit 4 million, you are not able to do the hard conquest mode. Now, for a lot of you, that may be a joy because Conquest, especially at that GP, at 4 million GP, Conquest is not easy. And unless you're a specific type of player, you're probably not going to enjoy having to do it as often as CG makes us do it. However, With all that being said, hard mode conquest is extremely important for filling out your roster with strong, capable characters like Commander Ahsoka Tano and Maul. And of course, the newest one is Boba Side of Jango, lovingly referred to from now on as Boba Fett. He seems like he will be another very strong character, although he is not quite released in game yet. So, all of that to say that when you're in the 2 to 3.5 million GP range, there's a certain element of wanting to rush to 4 million GP that I would strongly advise, because the sooner you can start working on those hard mode conquest seasons, the better it's going to be for your account, the less catching up you're going to have to do later. Okay, so that just leaves the last account type, which is the above 4 million GP. And obviously, there is a huge range of GPs that are captured within that particular range. And not all accounts are going to be even remotely similar. But my advice for those accounts is going to be roughly the same, no matter how big the GP disparity is. So whether you're a 4 million GP, whether you're an 8 million GP, this is what you need to do in order to do well in GAC. And this is not going to be a revelation to really anybody, but you have to focus on GLs. You need to get as many of those GLs as you possibly can. And as I mentioned before, GLs are the lever that every Grand Arena match will revolve around. And so the more you have at your disposal, the more likely you'll be to be able to climb high in the ladder, because it's inevitable. The higher you climb, the more GLs your opponents are going to have. And so hopefully, there's going to be some off-meta counters, and there's going to be a certain amount of GL disparity that you're going to be able to overcome with skill and planning. But at a certain point, a 1 GL account is just not going to be able to handle a 6 GL account. It's just not. You have to have enough resources at your disposal to be able to have a chance at outplaying your opponent. So I strongly recommend, even though there are some excellent marquees, there are some excellent B plus tier teams out there that are available that CG seems to be dropping. Make sure that you commit a large amount of focus towards getting those Galactic Legends so that you can compete at the highest level. So that kind of wraps up what I wanted to talk about in terms of the GP brackets. But there are a couple of other considerations that need to be addressed as well. So the first thing is for the mid and late game accounts. I realize that just grinding GLs is going to be extremely dull. And furthermore, once you have a couple of GLs, you're going to be able to compete for those lower Kyber spots. And in Kyber, you're going to be required to set 11 teams on defense in 5v5. And of course, you're going to have at least 11 teams for offense as well in order to clear your opponent. So that's 22 teams of mostly 5 characters that you're going to have at your disposal. That is a lot of teams, and you do not get that number of teams by just grinding for GLs. And so inevitably what's going to happen is there are going to be some people who just push for GLs, and they're going to be weak on the number of teams. And there's going to be people who just push for number of teams, and they're going to be weak on GLs. And my recommendation is going to be to take a middle path there. So what my personal account is going to look like right now, I'm going to be going in phases of GLs. So the phases, I don't have a sexy name for them, but basically you're going to go into phases of GL farming, which is kind of like power consolidation, going for that top powerful character. And then you're going to go for a roster fill out phase where you're not actively farming or saving all of your resources for a specific GL. What you're doing instead is filling out the number of teams that you have at your disposal that are actually, high quality teams in order to do well in GAC. So what does this look like in practice? So what I mean is, let's say that you have just finished your farm for Jedi Master Luke. And Jedi Master Luke has Jedi Knight Luke as one of his requirements. And Jedi Knight Luke by himself is an excellent Jedi leader and can be split off from Jedi Master Luke in a lot of instances and lead his own Jedi team. So once you've gotten Jedi Master Luke, I strongly recommend that you go back and fill out a couple of very important Jedi that can sort of act as filler to add that extra Jedi team to your roster instead of having, say, 7 or 8 very good Jedi and being able to run one really good team and then only having 2 or 3 Jedi left over. Farming those other couple of Jedi, such as, well, Cam is kind of a bad example because it's a guild-wide farm, but say someone like Ezra, who is a decent Jedi and can fit into a lot of different teams. Or Barris, who has certain defensive capabilities and seems to be a prime addition to certain other teams, maybe even the Qui-Gon Jinn Omicron team. So there are other Jedi that you can add to your roster that will help fill out that second team and give you a lot more depth than you would have otherwise just chasing for another GL straight off the bat. Sith Eternal would be another great example. Say you've just finished farming for him, and instead of going straight for the next GL, I highly recommend adding 2 more troopers, like Dark and Range, so that you would have a full team of 5 troopers. And Dark Trooper really does make that team, along with Piet. That is an insane team. Highly recommended for anybody who does not have a trooper team. Very key piece in Grand Arena. I highly recommend getting them. So that's what I mean by going in phases. I don't think that farming just straight go after all 6 GLs, one right after the other. You're not going to be able to fill enough holes, or you're going to have an exceedingly weak defense outside of the GLs that you place. Filling out those other teams with those B+ tier teams is highly recommended, and you're going to need them at the top ranks anyways. Okay. So, the other thing that is always important, and I've always harped on, but is becoming even more important with this update, are, that's right, everyone say it with me, mods. Mods have always been important to success in Grand Arena, but now with this core gear update that CG has released to allow us to gear more characters faster, we're going to be able to outpace our previous growth. And we're going to have more geared up characters at our disposal in the next couple of months. But CG didn't really give us a way to increase our mod depth along with the core gear. And so players are going to have to be really, really careful that they keep up with their mod farming and also try to divert a few extra resources over towards mods so that they can somewhat keep up with the demand that the new gear is going to place on their rosters in the next few months. So a couple of recommendations. The first recommendation would be to only buy mod slicing materials from the GAC store. This allows you to put more mod energy into farming new mods rather than having to farm those slicing materials to get to 6A. I've been doing this for, I guess, over a year now, and I highly recommend it before the change, and certainly after the change, it's almost necessary. I know those Chirotech are looking juicy in the GAC store, but there are other ways to get Chirotech. And remember, even you're going to be gearing up new characters faster anyways. You really do want to have some sort of gate on how quickly you can gear up characters. Otherwise, it's just your mod situation is going to run away. It's going to snowball out of your control, and you're going to wake up one day and have like only 6 speed mods for the next marquee character that you just relicked. Not a good situation to be in. So GAC slicing material. I also recommend out of the guild store, now that a lot of the pressure to buy things like stun cuffs and droid collars is gone from the guild token store. That is an area where I will shift more of my guild tokens towards slicing mats, those yellow 6E slicing mats. So I recommend do not get those out of Grand Arena store anymore. Use the Grand Arena store for the other 2 slicing mats, the ones that take 50 each to slice the 6E, and then use the guild store to get those yellow pieces that require 20 each to go to 6E. The other, of course, if you're looking to spend some of your crystal income, you can certainly buy mod slicing materials out of the rotating daily shipments as well. So that's another option for you if your crystal income is high to help keep your mod supply rolling. So basically, you want to be farming new mods with your mod energy as much as humanly possible. Definitely don't skip on any of the 50 cost mod refreshes. And I might start looking at adding a 4th mod refresh for 100 crystals per day, especially if you are in the 6 million GP range and still farming characters like a madman. You might want to kind of slow down on the characters and try to keep up with your mods. So anyways, yes, mods, still super important, and you're going to fall further behind. So the last big update, or the last big tip that I'll give to you in relation to the update is we have these new Omicron materials, and some of them are for territory war, some of them are for territory battle, and some of them are for Grand Arena. They're only active in that one game mode. Outside of that, they have no use. So I strongly recommend for all players, doesn't matter what guild you're in, doesn't matter how big or small your account is, I strongly recommend very prudent use of these Omicron mats. And by prudent use, I just mean whenever a new character comes out, I personally will be following my own advice. I am not going to apply an Omicron until I see video evidence of that character with that Omicron in action. I want to know exactly what the Omicron adds to the character in terms of what it can and can't beat, what sort of new counters are available for the team that it's on. I need to see all of that before I invest in it, because the Omicrons are exceedingly rare. You're not going to be able to apply all of the ones that you want for a long, long time. Now, with that being said, obviously what guild you're in is going to affect the different pressures that you're going to feel. So obviously Territory War Omicrons seem to be extremely powerful. I know the Phasma one definitely takes that team up a notch and gives you basically another free usable team in Territory War, because the Phasma team is not good without the Omicron. It just isn't. Of course, Boba Fett has 3 Omicrons on his kits, and he's likely to be like another GL in Territory Wars with those Omicrons applied. And so if your guild is focused on Territory Wars, there's going to be pressure for you to apply those Omicrons to that character. Of course, if you're a younger account or your guild doesn't care as much about Territory Wars, then you're probably going to be best off using those Omicrons on GAC characters. So the Qui-Gon Jinn Omicron looks good. The Zam Wessel Omicron actually looks like the very best Omicron in the game so far. Now, obviously, we can't test it until GAC comes back, but in terms of stats and what she's going to add to her team, that seems like a very good investment. And, of course, the new character Darth Talon that just dropped, she also has a GAC Omicron, and there's a lot of speculation that the new Starkiller character that will be being released on the 15th, that he will also have 2 or 3 Omicron abilities himself, and probably in Grand Arena. So that's a lot of characters. That's a lot of Omicrons. That's much more than you're going to be able to accumulate in a few months unless you just buy them from CG. And CG is selling them at a very premium price. So please be careful with your Omicrons. Know which game modes you need to prioritize. Obviously, with the crystals being moved to GAC, that's going to be a very attractive game mode to apply your Omicrons for. But my advice is to wait and see how they affect the teams and judge whether or not it would be a boon for your roster and whether it's worth using the very rare resource that Omicrons currently are. So with that, I'm going to wrap up this episode. I hope that it was at least somewhat helpful, gave some food for thought. Just remember that we are all experiencing this new GAC crystal paradigm together. I do not have all the answers yet. This is only just my speculation. But I think most of the advice that I've given in this episode is pretty much spot on. I don't think anybody is. I don't think many people are ready for the pressure that this update is going to put on all of us as players to have the new shiny toys. CG was very smart about making this particular transition. It has opened up the floodgates to give us no downside to adding every piece of gear, every relic level, every Zeta that we could possibly want. Obviously, this is a resource management game, and so you don't want to go crazy with your resources when they might be better spent elsewhere. But by removing the downside of the GP matchmaking and putting all of the players into basically one giant pool in terms of prizes, that will really ramp up the pressure to not only get all of the Galactic Legends that CG releases, but also all of the very strong and powerful marquees that can help you clear B teams and sometimes even counter Galactic Legends themselves. So I think it's a very smart move on CG's part. I'm also not mad at it at all because, let's face it, climbing Squad Arena every night for an hour, hour and a half, and then turning around and doing Fleet Arena every single night at the same time, I don't know. I'm feeling extremely liberated right now. I was playing GAC anyways. It is my favorite game mode. And so to put the rewards into something that I was already doing feels really good. And it's going to radically change the way that I look at my roster and develop it as well. I've already taken up some teams and pushed some GL requirements that I certainly would not have done otherwise without this change. And I think other players are going to feel that same pressure, especially as GAC starts to find your true skill level. Now, one other last thing before I completely wrap up the episode. For those of you who have not played a ladder-based game, I need to warn you about this. The way that they are doing the ranking and the matchmaking, after about 4 or 5 seasons of Grand Arena, so it's not going to be immediate, but after we've been doing this for a while, you're going to be matched up with players with very similar skill sets and rosters. Now, some of the rosters might be a little bit better. Some of the skill level might be a little bit better and have the inverse of the other one. But in general, most players, most matches that you get after a while are going to be very close. You probably win half the time and lose half the time. So those of you who have been doing extremely well in Grand Arena are going to have to get used to the fact that you're probably going 6-6 most seasons. Obviously, not every single person is going to go 6-6. Some people will outperform, some people will underperform, but the 8-4 season is likely to be the new 12-0. And that's just going to be a function of matching you up against players with basically similar abilities. And that's completely a function of taking away the GP matchmaking and the sandbagging element to it. So, anyways, just wanted to warn you about that. That is something that I think a lot of players are going to get shocked by. And we'll just have to get used to losing more often, and that's going to be a part of it. But overall, I think this is going to be a fun, exciting change. Frees up a lot of time for us to do more fun things in the game besides grind out Squad Arena, same battle 10 times or more every night at the same night. That's just, I mean, that's not really fun, at least not to me. Okay. So thank you all so much for listening to this episode. I hope it was helpful, and until next time, peace out.